Hello, friends. Today we explore the hidden turmoil of a family fractured by silence. Meet Alex Harper, a man haunted by the weight of a locked box in his home, which embodies the dark secrets that have long been ignored. As he grapples with the fear of unearthing the past, you'll discover the unsettling truth that some memories are better left buried. Let's begin. Alex Harper stood by the window of his modest living room, staring blankly at the world outside. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dusty glass, casting soft golden beams that danced over the wooden floor. But inside, a heavy, suffocating silence loomed. He could hear the distant sounds of children laughing in the park across the street, their joy starkly contrasting with the tension that gripped his heart. His fingers brushed against the rough surface of the locked box he had hidden in the corner of the room. It was a small, unassuming thing. But to Alex, it symbolized everything he had tried so hard to ignore. The secrets it contained felt like a weight pressing down on his chest, stifling his breath. Memories of whispered arguments and stony silences echoed in his mind, mingling with the fear that had long since settled in his bones. There was a part of him that ached to open that box, to confront the truths that lay within. Yet another part, one steeped in the tradition of silence, clung tightly to the belief that some things were better left unsaid. He glanced at the family photo hanging crookedly on the wall. It was a snapshot of a happier time. Maya beaming brightly between their parents, smiles etched on their faces, the kind of image that promised security and love. But beneath that veneer, Alex felt the cracks, the unspoken words that hovered in the air like dark clouds threatening a storm. Every time he tried to bring up the past with Maya, her eyes would steal over, her lips pressing into a thin line of defiance. She was the embodiment of denial, the unyielding fortress that stood between him and the clarity he so desperately sought. The thought of approaching her again tightened his throat. What if it only alienated her further? What if digging into the roots of their family's pain fractured the already tenuous bond they had left? Alex's heart raced, caught in a tug of war between the desire for healing and the visceral fear of tearing the family apart. In that moment, he was both the prisoner and the warden of his own heart, shackled by the unyielding chains of loyalty and silence. Can I really find peace without breaking these bonds? He whispered to himself, the question hanging in the air like an unanswered prayer. He turned away from the window, the sunlight fading into a muted glow as the shadows crept into the corners of the room. Each breath felt like a struggle against the weight of his unspoken thoughts. The silence was deafening, suffocating in its insistence. The box remained locked, a testament to his fear of facing the truths that had lingered far too long in the shadows. But as he stood there, a flicker of determination sparked within him. Perhaps it was time to confront the silence, not just for himself, but for Maya, for their father, for the tangled web of hurt and longing that bound them all together. Yet, the thought of what lay ahead terrified him. Could revealing those family secrets truly lead to healing? Or would it only deepen the wounds already festering beneath the surface? As he looked around the room, the weight of his decision loomed larger than ever. It was a burden he could no longer ignore, and yet, the fear of what lay beyond that locked box stifled his courage. Alex took a deep breath, his gaze lingering on the box, questioning if it was truly a shield or merely a source of greater pain. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the floor. And in that fading light, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He was at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of revelation, where the promise of peace dangled tantalizingly close, but only at the cost of tearing open the seams of silence that had long held his family together. Alex sat in the softly lit room, the air thick with unspoken words. The faint tick of the wall clock punctuated the silence, a reminder of moments slipping away, moments he could not reclaim. Across from him, Dr. Evelyn Grant, poised and empathetic, began to speak. Her voice was warm yet authoritative, a gentle guide through the murky waters of his thoughts. "Family secrets," she said, leaning slightly forward, "are like a locked box. They may seem harmless, even protective at first. But over time, they can become a heavy burden. Holding on to them can lead to a disconnection, both within ourselves and with those we love." Alex's gaze flickered to the corner of the room where shadows danced, reminiscent of the secrets that loomed over his family. He felt the weight of the silence pressing on his chest, a familiar sensation, as if the locked box was sitting there with him, filled to the brim with unacknowledged pain. "What happens when we choose silence?" Dr. Grant continued, her brow furrowed in concern. "It might feel like we're shielding ourselves and our loved ones from hurt. But in reality, we're often deepening emotional wounds. The longer we avoid the truth, the more it festers." Her words stirred something within him, a mixture of fear and a flicker of understanding. He clenched his fists, feeling the urge to defend the silence he'd been taught to uphold. But what if, he wondered, what if that silence was only prolonging their suffering? The question hung in the air, a tangible weight demanding attention. "Consider this," Dr. Grant said, her tone shifting to one of gentle challenge. "What is the price of this family silence for your emotional health? Are you truly protecting them, or are you simply protecting yourself?" Alex's heart raced as her question penetrated the walls he had built around himself. He thought of Maya, his younger sister, whose laughter once echoed through their home, now stifled by the same unspoken truths. He thought of their father, James, who wore his silence like armor, a relic of tradition that had started to rust with the weight of unshared burdens. The locked box loomed larger in his mind, an ever-present reminder of everything they had left unexamined. Was it really safer to keep those secrets locked away? I don't know," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels like if we open it, everything might fall apart." Dr. Grant nodded, her eyes steady and encouraging. "That fear is valid, Alex. But consider this. What if opening that box leads to healing rather than ruin? What if it allows for deeper connections, for true understanding?" A flicker of hope ignited within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. Could the truth really serve as a bridge rather than a chasm? The tension inside him was palpable, a push and pull between the desire for emotional safety and the longing for authenticity. As Dr. Grant continued, her voice a soothing balm to his turmoil, Alex felt a shift occurring within him. A quiet rebellion against the silence that had defined his family for so long began to take root. The path ahead felt daunting, yet, for the first time, he glimpsed the possibility of liberation. But the question remained, lingering in the silence that followed. How much longer could he afford to remain silent before the weight of secrets crushed him entirely? The late afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the worn wooden table where Alex sat, his fingers tracing the surface as if searching for answers hidden within the grain. The air was thick with unspoken words, a silence that reverberated like the dull thud of a heartbeat in the stillness. Maya stood by the sink, her back to him, washing the dishes with a fervor that seemed to match the storm brewing inside him. "Can we talk?" Alex finally broke the silence, his voice tentative. barely a whisper against the clinking of plates. She stiffened, the suds slipping through her fingers as if they were secrets she was desperate to keep. About what? Maya asked, her tone flat, devoid of curiosity, as she turned to face him, a mask of indifference replacing the warmth that usually lit her eyes. About Dad. About the things we've never said. The words felt heavy as they left his lips, laden with the weight of years spent in the shadow of silence. He watched her closely, searching for a flicker of understanding or acknowledgement. "Not this again, Alex," she said, her voice rising slightly, a tremor of irritation creeping in. She turned back to the sink, her body a wall he couldn't scale. "We agreed to leave it alone. There's no point in digging up the past." No point? He felt a surge of frustration mixed with fear, the fear of losing his sister to the very secrets that had kept them apart for so long. It's eating us from the inside. We can't keep pretending everything is fine when we both know it's not. Don't you want to understand? Understand what? Maya shot back, her eyes narrowing. That our family isn't perfect? That we've had our problems? What good will it do to open old wounds? The broken mirror hanging on the wall behind her caught a beam of sunlight, splintering it into 1,000 shards that danced across the room. It felt like a metaphor for their lives, each fragment a piece of the truth they were too scared to face. Alex's heart ached at the sight. How long had they lived with these fractured reflections, pretending they were whole? Maybe it's not about perfection, Maya. Maybe it's about being honest, about healing. He pressed on, longing to bridge the chasm that had only widened with each passing day. We can't heal what we don't confront. She clenched her jaw, her hands gripping the edge of the sink as if it were a lifeline. "I'm not ready for that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But the admission felt like a surrender, a crack in her facade. "You don't have to do it alone," he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm here with you. We can face it together." Maya's shoulders slumped, and for a moment he thought he saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, a glimmer of the sister he used to know. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by the familiar walls of denial and fear. "I just don't want to hurt anyone, Alex. I don't want to drag this family into the mud." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their reality. Could he spark in her a desire for honesty when she was so afraid of the truth? He felt the distance between them grow, an unbearable ache spreading through him as the broken mirror reflected not just their fragmented lives, but the breaking of their bond. "Isn't it worse to live in silence?" he asked, voicing the question that had haunted him. "What is the price of our silence, Maya?" But she had turned away again, returning to the chore that now felt so meaningless in the face of their unaddressed reality. "I can't, Alex. I just can't," she murmured. The resignation in her voice, a finality that echoed in the silence of the kitchen. And there they stood, two siblings trapped in the weight of unspoken truths, the question lingering between them like an unresolved chord, leaving Alex to ponder if the courage to confront their hidden family secrets would ever emerge from the shadows. Alex sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the open window, the late afternoon light filtering through the sheer curtains. A gentle breeze stirred the fabric, as if inviting him to let go of the heavy thoughts that clung to him like a second skin. Outside, the world buzzed with life. The laughter of children, the distant hum of a lawnmower, the rustling leaves whispering secrets of their own. Yet within the confines of his room, silence wrapped around him, thick and suffocating. He glanced at the journal lying open on his bedside table, pages filled with half-formed thoughts and sketches of emotions he hadn't yet found the words to articulate. Today's entry was different. It was raw, a reflection of the turmoil that churned inside him. "What if uncovering the truth destroys us?" he had written, words trembling with fear. His hand hovered over the pen, poised to continue, but he hesitated, the weight of his doubts pressing down. The tension within him was palpable, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. He knew he was at a crossroads. For too long, the secrets of his family had loomed like dark clouds, casting shadows on every interaction, every smile shared with Maya. It was as if a locked box sat between them, filled with unspoken words and unresolved pain, and he was the only one who could find the key. But what if that key unleashed a torrent of destruction? He thought of Maya, her laughter echoing in his memory like a fading song. She had been so resistant to discussing their family's past, her denial a shield he had respected, even if it left him feeling isolated. The thought of confronting her filled him with dread. What if she didn't want to hear the truth? What if their bond shattered under the weight of revelations? But as he sat there, the light pouring in through the window, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. He couldn't remain in this limbo, frozen by fear. He had been carrying the burden of silence for too long, and it was time to seek understanding, even if it meant walking through the fire. Silence is not protection. It's a prison. Dr. Evelyn's words echoed in his mind, a reminder that the emotional safety he sought was a mirage, only deepening his wounds. With a shaky breath, Alex pushed himself off the bed, feet landing firmly on the cool wooden floor. He moved toward the window, the open frame inviting a rush of fresh air that felt like a promise. The outside world seemed so full of possibility, a stark contrast to the claustrophobia of his thoughts. He imagined confronting the truth, feeling the weight of the locked box lift, revealing the sunlight of understanding and empathy. What if this journey led to healing? What if the pain he feared was merely the beginning of liberation? For the first time, he felt the stirrings of courage, a willingness to embrace vulnerability, to break the cycle of silence that had enveloped his family for generations. The struggle was far from over, but as he looked out at the horizon, he felt a flicker of hope. An open window beckoning him to step forward into the unknown. Still, the question lingered in the air, heavy and unresolved. Would he have the strength to overcome his fear and confront the truth, even if it meant risking everything he held dear? The dimly lit room felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths as Alex sat on the edge of the worn leather couch, the air thick and suffocating. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering like memories he had long tried to suppress, echoing the silence that enveloped his family. The walls, adorned with fading photographs of smiles and laughter, suddenly seemed to close in, reminding him of the locked box in the attic, his father's box, buried and forgotten. In a flash, Alex was pulled back to a moment from his childhood. He was 8 years old, small fingers gripping a rusted key that shimmered in the sun. He had found it while rummaging through the dusty corners of the attic, curiosity piqued by the sight of the old oak chest. "Dad," he had called, excitement bubbling in his chest. James Harper had rushed up the stairs, urgency in his stride. "Don't touch that," he had barked, fear flashing in his eyes. There was something in his father's voice, a sharp edge that sliced through the innocence of a child. Alex remembered the way the air had shifted then, thick with tension, as James knelt down, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Some secrets are meant to stay hidden, Alex. You understand?" Now, sitting in that same room, the memory churned within him. a relentless tide pushing against the dam of his emotions. He glanced at Maya, his younger sister, who sat cross-legged on the floor, her face a mixture of confusion and denial. She still believed in the protective power of silence, a belief instilled by their father's stern demeanor. "Why can't we just forget about it?" she asked, her voice quaking. "What good will it do to dig up old wounds?" Alex felt the knot in his stomach tighten. "Because," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper, "there's something we need to know. Something that could change everything." The shock of his words hung between them like a heavy fog. Maya's brow furrowed, disbelief etched across her features. "You mean the box? You're thinking of opening it?" His heart raced. The locked box, the embodiment of everything they had avoided, everything James had sworn to protect them from. In that moment, Alex understood the depth of his father's fear and the burden it had placed upon them all. "We have to confront it," he urged, desperation creeping into his tone. "It's not just about the secrets. It's about us, our family." As he spoke, the shadows in the room seemed to shift, accentuating the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. The atmosphere grew electric, charged with the tension of years spent in the silence of denial. He could almost hear the whispers of the ghosts trapped within the walls, the silent witnesses to their pain. Maya shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "What if it's worse than we think? What if it tears us apart?" Her words struck him like a blow, igniting a flicker of doubt in his heart. What if revealing the truth did irreparable damage? But the thought of remaining shackled to secrets that had already shaped their lives felt unbearable. A part of him longed for liberation, the kind that only vulnerability could bring. "Sometimes," Alex began, his voice steadier now, "the only way to heal is to face the truth. The weight of silence is too heavy to bear." But the air was thick with unresolved tension, and the question loomed large. How would they navigate the fragile landscape of their family history if the key to understanding lay within a locked box? Would its opening lead to healing or further fracture? In that moment of uncertainty, the locked box became more than just a physical object. It represented the very essence of their family's struggle. The shadows swirled around them, rich with the promise of revelation, yet suffocating in its potential for chaos. As the silence fell once more, heavy and pregnant with unspoken words, Alex felt the stirrings of courage rising within him. Perhaps it was time to find the key. The soft hum of the therapy room enveloped Alex Harper as he sat across from Dr. Evelyn Grant. The walls, painted a calming blue, felt like a protective cocoon, yet the air was thick with the unspoken truths that hung between them. Today was different. He could sense a shift, a glimmer of hope peeking through the layers of doubt that had shrouded him for so long. Dr. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes piercing through his hesitation. "Alex," she began gently, "let's talk about how you can start addressing the silence in your family. What would it look like to open that locked box?" His stomach churned at the thought. The locked box, the metaphor that haunted him, held secrets that had been preserved with painstaking care. They were the very essence of his family dynamics, shrouded in silence. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's easier not to say anything." "But is it truly easier? Or is it just more familiar?" she challenged, her voice firm yet nurturing. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. For a moment, Alex felt the weight of his own denial bear down on him. "I worry about what might happen if I speak up," he confessed, the fear creeping back into his thoughts. "What if it tears us apart?" Dr. Evelyn nodded thoughtfully, her gaze unwavering. Alex, silence may seem like protection, but it can also be a cage. You need to find a way to initiate conversation without the fear of judgment. I want you to think about what you need to say and how you can frame it. He shifted in his seat, the tension in his body palpable. The idea of framing his thoughts into something coherent felt like an impossible task. How do I even start? He asked, his brow furrowing with confusion. Begin with a simple statement of your feelings. Use I language instead of you, she suggested. For example, I feel burdened by our unspoken truths instead of you never talk about it. This takes the pressure off others and opens the door for dialogue. As she spoke, a metaphorical window began to open in his mind, allowing light to flood in. He envisioned himself walking through that window, breaking free of the confinement he had endured for so long. And what if they push back? He pressed, anxiety tightening around his chest. Resistance is natural, especially when confronting difficult topics. Dr. Evelyn replied, her tone steady. But remember, you're not seeking to blame. You're trying to understand. Each family member may respond differently. Some might feel threatened, while others may surprise you with empathy. Alex nodded slowly, absorbing her words like lifelines thrown into turbulent waters. The idea of empathy felt foreign, yet tantalizingly close. Could it be possible? Could he, through small steps, foster a conversation that might lead to healing? Yet, as the sunlight streamed through that open window, illuminating the space between them, doubt still flickered in his heart. But what if it changes everything? He asked, a tremor in his voice. Change is inevitable, Alex, Dr. Evelyn said, her eyes softening with understanding. But it doesn't have to be destructive. It can lead to growth, connection, and authenticity. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settling within him. The room felt charged with potential, yet the question remained suspended in the air. How practical strategies could transform his inner turmoil into constructive dialogue? Thank you, he finally whispered, a sense of resolve beginning to take root amidst the uncertainty. As he rose to leave, the open window remained in his mind, symbolizing the possibility of change and the courage that lay ahead. The living room was heavy with unspoken words, the air taut as a drawn bowstring. Sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds, creating a fractured pattern on the floor, much like the relationships contained within these walls. A broken mirror reflecting shards of reality. Alex stood near the window, hands shoved into his pockets, heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. Maya sat on the edge of the couch, her arms crossed defensively, eyes avoiding his. Why can't you just see it from my perspective? Alex's voice trembled slightly, barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a knife. We can't keep pretending everything is fine. It's not. Maya flinched, the tension radiating between them palpable. Pretending? Who's pretending? I'm just trying to keep things together. Her voice had a sharpness that echoed against the walls, a defense mechanism forged from years of silence. Together? Alex echoed incredulously, taking a step closer, the distance between them shrinking but the chasm of misunderstanding widening. You think ignoring what happened will keep us together? It won't. It's tearing us apart. She stood abruptly, the chair skidding back against the hardwood floor with a screech. You don't know what you're asking. You have no idea how much it could hurt. What if it ruins everything? Her eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears, a storm of resistance brewing beneath the surface. I'm not trying to ruin anything, Maya. I'm trying to save us. His voice was rising now, frustration clawing at him. Don't you see? The longer we stay silent, the worse it gets. It festers. It's like a wound that won't heal because we keep covering it up. Maya shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. You think talking will fix it? You think it's that easy? Each word was soaked in bitterness, and Alex could feel the weight of their unaddressed past pressing down on them both like a phantom haunting the space. You're right, he admitted, his tone softening. Yet the fire of his conviction still burned. It's not easy. But keeping secrets only deepens the pain. We've been living in a broken mirror, Maya. Fractured reflections of ourselves. Are you really okay with that? The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved, as Maya's gaze fell to the floor. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of hope in her eyes, a glimmer of the sister he used to know. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by the familiar walls of denial and fear. I don't know, she finally whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know if I can do this. The vulnerability in her admission cracked the facade she'd built around herself, revealing a glimpse of the fear that had held her captive for so long. Neither do I, Alex confessed, his heart racing with each beat. But we have to try. If we don't, we risk losing each other completely. I refuse to let fear dictate our lives any longer. Maya looked up, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. What if it tears us apart? Or what if it sets us free? Alex countered, his eyes searching hers for a sign, a hint of hope amidst the turmoil. The broken mirror of their existence glimmered in the sunlight, reminding him of what could be if they only dared to face the truth. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating, a reminder of all that remained unspoken. Yet, even in that stillness, the question lingered. Could they overcome the fear and resistance to begin an honest conversation, despite the risk of fracture? The air in the living room felt thick, almost suffocating. As Alex stood near the open window, the cool breeze brushing against his skin like a gentle reminder of the outside world. It was a familiar space, filled with the echoes of laughter and the remnants of happier times. But today, it was weighed down by silence. A silence that had become a heavy cloak around their family. He glanced back at Maya, sitting on the edge of the couch, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, eyes darting away from his. Why can't we just forget? She whispered, her voice trembling. Forget. The word hung in the air, more of a plea than a statement. Alex had spent so long numbing himself to the truth, believing that silence was the safest refuge for their family. However, as he looked at Maya, he could see the cracks in her facade, the fear that mirrored his own. He felt the weight of their father's secrets pressing down on them both, and for the first time, it filled him with an uncomfortable urgency. I can't forget, Alex replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Not anymore. Not when it's eating us alive. We have to talk about it, Maya. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the curtains as if urging him on. This was the moment, the turning point he had anticipated but also dreaded. His heart raced, and he forced himself to breathe deeply, the cool air filling his lungs while his mind fought against a tide of doubt. What if revealing the truth shattered everything? What if this choice only deepened the rift between them? Yet, beneath the turmoil, a glimmer of resolve began to shine. He could feel the tension in the room shift, the air crackling with the unspoken words that had lingered for too long. He stepped closer to Maya, vulnerability inching its way into his heart. We can't keep pretending that everything is fine. We're not fine. and I can't bear the thought of living like this." Maya's expression softened momentarily, but then her defenses rose again. What if talking about it makes it worse? What if it makes it better? Alex interrupted, a spark of determination igniting within him. What if we finally understand each other? What if we can start healing? As he spoke, Alex felt a rush of warmth envelop him, a sense of empowerment that surged through his veins. The open window seemed to symbolize the possibilities that lay ahead: freedom, transparency, and the hope of new beginnings. They could breathe again, if only they dared to take the first step. "Dad's kept us in the dark for so long," he continued, his voice now a fervent whisper. "We deserve to know the truth." The room was thick with unspoken words as Alex sat at the dining table, his heart racing. The tension that had previously filled the air with static now felt like a fragile thread, stretched taut between him, Maya, and their father, James. Sunlight filtered through the open window, casting a warm glow across the scattered remnants of last night's dinner. The open window, their silent witness, invited the promise of fresh air. Yet it also brought with it the weight of what lay outside, of all the possibilities they had yet to face. Maya's fingers drummed nervously against her leg, her eyes darting away from Alex. But he could see the flicker of vulnerability behind her bravado. "I didn't mean for it to come out like that," she finally whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence. I thought we were okay." James shifted in his seat, his usually stoic demeanor cracking under the vulnerability of the moment. "It's not about being okay, Maya. It's about facing the truth. We've lived in this shadow for too long." His words hung in the air like a delicate balance, as if daring anyone to disrupt the fragile peace they were beginning to forge. Alex took a deep breath, the taste of hope mingling with the bitterness of past pain. "I know it's hard," he said, his voice firmer this time, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. "But what's the cost of silence? Running from the truth has only led us to this disconnect." He gestured between them, the ache of longing for connection evident in his eyes. A tear escaped Maya's eye, and she wiped it away angrily. "But what if the truth hurts?" she asked, each word a tremor of fear. "What if it destroys everything we have?" "That's the risk we take for healing," Alex replied, the weight of his own fears pressing down on him yet again. "We can't protect each other by pretending anymore. We need to talk about what happened. About everything." The open window fluttered with the breeze, as if echoing his resolve, the possibility of clarity and transparency flowing in. James looked at Alex, his expression a mix of pride and sorrow. "You're right, son. I've kept so much from you both because I thought it would spare you pain. But it's done the opposite." His gaze dropped, the shame of his secrets threatening to drown him. "I've held on to my silence for so long, thinking it was a shield. It was never meant to be this way." In that moment, vulnerability rippled through the room, washing away the defensive walls they had built. The tension that once felt like a chokehold started to dissolve into a cautious hope. Alex dared to look at Maya as she took a shaky breath, the space between them beginning to soften. Maybe we can figure this out together," she ventured, her voice a tentative bridge reaching across the chasm of their emotional silence. As they sat together, the open window invited the sounds of the outside world, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves. Each sound a reminder that life continued beyond their walls, beyond their secrets. Alex felt the weight in his chest lift slightly, replaced by the warmth of empathy slowly taking root. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, They were willing to step into the unknown together. The question lingered in the air, unyielding and profound. How can the manifestation of empathy and understanding inspire further emotional healing and personal honesty? As they exchanged tentative smiles, the distance between them shrank, and Alex knew they stood on the precipice of something transformative. With every word shared, they took a step closer to healing, to reclaiming their narrative from the shadows, ready to embrace the light that now filtered through the open window.